Welcome to the Topic of the Month with Kim Wardlow, an ainc original podcast. It's not easy being blind or going through vision loss, but we'll help you navigate these waters. Press on. Push forward. You've got this.
Hello and welcome to the Topic of the Month. I'm your host, Kim Wardlow, the Executive Director at the Audio Information Network of Colorado. Joining me today, it will be Penn Street. Last month, we talked with Lorraine Hutchison from DVR about advocacy in different life situations. So whether you're in a restaurant, transportation issues at work. So if you missed those, please go back and listen to those. She had lots of helpful information. Blindsight has launched, and that is our podcast talking about mental health. And we would love for you to check that out. And we're always wanting to answer your questions. If you have questions with regards to mental health, please let us know. Colorado Gives Day is coming up on December 6th, but you can schedule your donation early so you don't have to worry about the date. So go to Colorado Gives and schedule your donations now. And then when December 6th rolls around, you'll know you already have that task done. And finally, just to let you know that our podcast Aftersight, which has been so popular, just launched our 1-year anniversary episode. So we're super excited about that. Definitely listen to that. That is Penn and Eric Weinmeier. So that is a great interview. And then Penn is here today. So normally the host, today she's the guest. And we'll be talking about awareness and education with regards to disabilities and specifically vision and hearing loss. But as always, we start out with just a few get to know you questions. I know Penn does this too, so she will be prepared. So the first question I have for you is cake or pie?
Oh, definitely cake. Chocolate cake, preferably.
Yes, me too. Most people seem to say pie, but I really like cake myself.
Yeah.
With lots of frosting.
Yes.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Definitely chocolate all the way.
Yeah. Would you rather be in the mountains or on the beach?
Oh, that one is so hard because
It's hard, right?
Yeah. My absolute perfect would be on the beach with the mountain behind me. But I definitely, when I go on vacation, I head to the beach. But I definitely enjoy being in the mountains. But if I had to choose, I actually would pick the beach. I would pick the beach.
I wasn't sure. I know you're a skier, so I wasn't sure about that one. And then I guess the last one, if you had a choice, would you rather have dinner just with a couple of close friends or a larger dinner party?
I would rather have dinner with just a couple of friends. And I don't know if it's because of my visual impairment, but it's just easier for me to navigate and even navigating a conversation with a couple of friends versus when it's a big table. And I also have some hearing loss. And so even with my hearing aid, sometimes if there's too many people at the table, I'm only catching little snippets of what everybody's saying. So
of conversation. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this month we're exploring disability awareness and education. And for this first session, we're really looking at some basic things, and even just being able to name one's disability. I know sometimes it can be hard for a person, especially if they've lost vision, they've lost hearing, partway through life, to be able to say that to someone.
Right.
How do you talk about your disability, especially if it's something new and maybe the people around you aren't aware yet. Sometimes it might be something that's very dramatic, like an accident or something that's happened, and people are more aware. But sometimes both vision and hearing can be lost over time, and people may not be aware. But there comes a point where you have to start talking about it and letting people know.
Yeah, it's a hard one, and this is just my opinion and my experience, but it's just like in the blind/low vision world, I'm totally blind in my right eye, but I do still have some vision in my left eye. So does that make me blind, or does it make me low vision? I'm kind of on the fence there. But also, even with low vision, sometimes people don't like that term. There's all these clever terms like VIP, visually impaired person, sight impaired. There's all these different terms. And then even blind is, it's kind of blunt, right? It's like, I'm blind. It's like, it's kind of like a stop sign for a lot of people. And I think, whatever you're comfortable with. So like when I talk about labels, because they are labels, right? Is what do you feel comfortable identifying with? So somebody who's had like a really positive experience with somebody who's blind, or like me, Helen Keller is one of my heroes. And so she was blind and she was deaf. Right. And so because I have that experience and she's my hero, I'm totally comfortable with those terms. But if you grew up and there was a negative connotation with those words, you might not feel comfortable using them. And then also with people, especially family or even friends that have known you for a long time, my family would never use the word blind. They'll say I have low vision, or I can't see so good, or right. My brother would always say, "Oh, you're blind as a bat at night," like kind of joking about it. But my family, especially my mom, was never comfortable with the word blind, but they were fine with the word, visually impaired or, low vision. So it really depends on the person. And even with deaf and hard of hearing, it's the same thing, And I also think kids, it's the same thing. If they grew up with a positive reinforcement with those words, they're going to use those words, And so I think it really totally depends. But I think you just need to find what works for you and what you feel comfortable with. And that's what you should use. And then ask your family and friends to use that word, even if it might be difficult for them.
Yeah, I know there can be a lot of controversy about that, blind versus low vision or other terms. And I know there are some that are very, if you don't have functional vision, you're blind, even if you can see something, and are very adamant about that. But not everybody is comfortable with that. So I think your point is well taken. It really has to be what you as a person can identify with.
Well, and I didn't know this for a long time, but even in the totally blind community, they have words for people who still have a little bit of vision, and they call us peekers because we can still peek. Where if you're total, you can't peek, right? You can't, it doesn't matter about the lighting or anything like that, or magnification. They're blind. It's kind of that stop sign I was talking about. But
right.
But so I've had friends that were totally blind, either from an accident or a medical situation, or from birth, and they call me peekers. Which I didn't know about.
I've not heard that term. I've been called a sightling because I do have sight.
I haven't heard that
sightling. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So as a person is adjusting to their vision loss, and they're adjusting to people noticing, because I think sometimes you think, well, if I don't talk about it, maybe nobody will notice. That they don't want to look like they have a disability.
Right.
Trying to deal with those things and being
Right.
comfortable. And if somebody does notice something, like, wow, it seems like you're having a hard time,
Yeah.
whether it's hearing or, it seems like that you're not seeing things very
Yeah.
well. If other people are noticing how a person can engage and talk to them about whatever their diagnosis may be, because
Right.
that varies too with vision loss. You might be
Yeah.
able to still see with central vision, but have lost your periphery, or vice versa. You can't see anything in front of you,
Right.
but you can see a little bit with your peripheral vision. And I know I've talked to people that their family didn't think they really couldn't see because they had macular and they couldn't see in front of them, but they happened to notice a piece of paper on the floor with their peripheral vision. And so
Right.
it's like, wait a minute, you said you couldn't see, but now you can. And so trying to educate others about your specific vision, vision loss or perhaps hearing loss.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a huge topic. I know when I was growing up, my mom didn't want people to know that I couldn't see because she thought people would take advantage of me. And so she was not, I mean, she allowed me to, I mean, I had the low vision teachers and, and I had orientation and mobility and they taught me Braille, but she really didn't embrace it. And so when we would go out, she would rather hold my hand versus me taking my cane. And so, it's kind of like those labels we were talking about in my mom's world. And my mom was low vision and she did not use a cane. She didn't use any tools. And she was also hearing impaired, but most people did not know that. They knew that she couldn't drive, but I think they thought it was her generation or it was a choice she made. They didn't think that it was because she was blind and she couldn't hear. And so I grew up I did not want to use a cane or a guide dog because of like what you're talking about. Like, I didn't want people to see me as I couldn't see. And so it took and I hear that a lot with, younger kids that still have residual vision. They don't want to use a cane because they don't want to be identified as, somebody who can't see. But to me, I mean, and as I got older and I had some situations that were really unsafe for me because I didn't have a cane or a guide dog, that's when I was like, this is wrong. I need to embrace a tool that is going to keep me safe and actually give me more freedom, because what was happening is I wouldn't go out at night. I'd have friends that would want to go to the movies or they want to go do stuff. And I'd always make up excuses not to go because I knew I could, because in the daytime, I couldn't see that great. But at night, I really was, like my brother said, blind as a bat. And if I didn't have my brother or my little sister with me that could guide me without it looking like they were guiding me, I just wouldn't go out. And so what people don't realize is that they don't use a tool that, yes, it does identify you, but it also, if you're not using that tool, your world gets really small and you're actually put in way more dangerous of a situation. I tell people about my mom, not wanting, my dad didn't care. My dad was like, you just make it in this world the best way you can. And whatever it takes, you do, kind of attitude. But my mom was very, very protective. But a lot of parents are. It wasn't just my mom. I see it over and over with it. But even I work with seniors, and so many of them I know should be using a white cane, not just for identification, but they also should be using it for safety, going up and down stairs and things like that. But it's just, it has such a negative symbol. One of the things, there's a company out of Canada called Ambutech, and they have canes that you can get in any color. So if you're a little girl and you want a bright pink cane, you can get a bright pink cane, or you can get it multiple colors so that it's like your school colors. I wish they had that when I was little. And I know there is some controversy with orientation and mobility instructors that don't like people using those because it's not the symbol, right? But I feel like if a little girl would use a bright pink cane or a purple cane or red or whatever it is, even if it's not a symbol, if she'll use it, that's like almost the entire battle, right?
Right, that's the win, right? Because it's better to use it in some other color than to have a white cane and not use it.
Exactly. Because I do think that people look at that white cane as almost like a failure, like, oh my gosh, I'm at that point. Because I hear that too. Oh, I'm not there yet, and where I'm like, you embrace it. Like, this is who you are, and your world will get so much bigger once you start even magnifying glasses, Kim. Like, people are embarrassed to pull out their handheld magnifier in public. And I'm like, well, you're going to look a lot sillier holding that piece of paper at the end, smashed against your face. That's going to give you away.
Using the tool.
So yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's the same thing with people who with hearing loss is, there's tools like hearing aids. And again, hearing aids, I just got my first pair a few months ago, and they come in all kinds of colors, and it's,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't, but I could have gotten bright pink or purple, or they even have superhero characters on them. So it's, if there's a tool out there, even though it identifies you as having a disability, that tool is going to give you so much more freedom and access than you trying to hide your disability. That's my philosophy anyway. And if your friends or family are embarrassed or they don't want to be seen with you with that tool, I would maybe reconsider that relationship.
Right. So that might be another discussion then to have with
absolutely
that person or persons.
Yeah. Like what is it about this that's making you uncomfortable? Because it's them, it's not you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if you are comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And using the tools enables you to keep doing the things you want to do.
Absolutely.
So you're not losing the ability to do lots of things. There might be some things, but you're just doing things differently as opposed to not being able to do them.
Exactly. And
I think people struggle with that. Well, now I can't do this. I can't do that. And well, are you sure? Maybe you can. Maybe it's a matter of training or a tool.
Exactly. Well, it's like there's a ton of sighted people that use talking GPS on their phones or in their car, or even, they magnify a photo on their phone. Nobody looks at them weird, and they're using a tool. And they're actually using a tool that makes your life easier. So a lot of the tools that we are using are tools that sighted people are using. It's just, we have that stigma, that culture kind of has put on us that, oh, that means you're different, but we're all different. None of us are the same. So.
Yeah. And it is beneficial that there are tools that are just generally accepted.
Absolutely.
Because they've made them more available and less expensive.
Yes.
For individuals that have vision loss that really absolutely need them.
Now
that they're just in the market.
Sighted people use, like I was just on a hike on Sunday with friends, and there was 4 of us that were visually impaired, and everybody had hiking poles. Like the blind people did, the sighted people did. And nobody looked at them weird, the sighted people, because they were using trekking poles. Well, they were using them because it's safer. You're more steady on your feet. And it's like, it's the same thing with your white cane crossing an intersection. You're just safer doing it. So you shouldn't be ashamed of those tools.
Yeah. So really being able to be able to ask for help when you need it and be willing to accept it.
Yes.
Sometimes help is offered that's not wanted or needed, but there are times when we all need help with something, and being able to just acknowledge that and be okay with asking for the help when you need it.
Absolutely. And it is hard when you have a disability, because that's one of the first things you're going to notice, like, oh my goodness, I actually am going to need, help maybe in the grocery store seeing, the brand of peanut butter you want or whatever. But just remember that how good it feels when somebody asks you for help and you are able to give it to them. That feels good. It feels great. You usually go home and tell people like, oh, I was able to help this person today. Well, it's the same thing when you're asking for help. It's that person is going to feel like, oh, I can help somebody today. So it's reciprocal. So it's don't be afraid, to ask. Some people, there's going to be a no occasionally, but most of the time it will be, that would be thanks for asking me. Like, that makes them feel special.
Right. Well, you alluded to this in some of the comments you've already made, but are there things that are different about learning about your vision loss or dealing with your vision loss as you're interacting with other people if you've lost it in different ways? So some people have been blind or low vision since they were born.
Yeah.
So that's just the norm for them. I know one person, actually she's on our board, who says, I didn't even know I had a disability because it's just how life was. And my parents had the same condition. So it just was normal, and didn't realize it till you got into school and other people were telling you you're different.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe somebody who has an accident. It's very sudden. There's not much time to adjust. Or what we often see with individuals that lose vision with age is it might be a drawn out process. So you're kind of continually losing and adjusting.
Yeah. And that can definitely be exhausting, because my eyes are like that. I lost a huge chunk when I was 9, when I got the onset of Stevens-Johnson syndrome. But I was a kid. I knew things were fuzzy, and I knew people were treating me different, but it didn't really hit me until I went back to school. And then it was like, oh, I can't see the blackboard anymore. I can't, see my school books like I did before. But I didn't really notice it until that, kind of like what Cindy on our board said. But I do think it is different if you are born with it versus if you lose it later in life. And even when you lose it later in life, it's harder. I know Eric Weimer, you mentioned him earlier, there's a point in his book that he talks about when he finally lost all of his vision. It was almost a blessing because he didn't have to fight it anymore. He didn't have to adjust constantly anymore. And I hear that over and over. Not that I would want to lose what little vision I have left. I'm not saying that at all, but it is when you're constantly transitioning and constantly adapting and having to learn new skills and new tools, it is exhausting because you don't know when you get up in the morning, like, oh, is this going to be a good eye day or bad eye day? And so I do think that there is a difference, but no matter what it is, when you lose it, if it's an accident or whatever, a lot of it depends on you, like your spirit, and in general, are you the kind of person that bounces back after, something negative happening in your life? Or are you, somebody that it really is going to wipe you out? Because I've been around people who've been total since birth, totally blind since birth, and they
Mhm.
can hardly function. And it's because they had people
Oh,
around
wow.
them that took care of every single need. They never needed to learn those skills. But then I've met other people like Evan, who's on our staff, who he's totally comfortable with his blindness and navigation and the skills. And he's always, looking for new skills. So a lot of it depends around, it's like with any child, right? What is it, nature or nurture? I think it's the same thing.
Right.
And even if you
And
lose it
that's
later in life, yeah.
yeah, and that can be a little bit tougher. Not that it's difficult if you have family or friends around you and you're older, being overly concerned. I've seen that with seniors. Well,
Yeah,
my kids are worried that I can't live on my own and they want me to
yeah,
move and I don't want to move. But when you're a kid, you don't really have the option. And then you're
right,
hoping that maybe teachers and, other people might be of influence
right,
to parents to be able to say, well, you may have to let your child have a little more freedom. And certainly, you don't want to put them in danger unnecessarily,
right,
but they might really need to learn how to cross the street on their own and
right.
those kinds of things.
Yeah, I
That's a
know.
little, you don't have as much influence when you're a kid, but
Exactly. I know my low vision teacher in Fort Collins, her and my mom went around around and around all the time because she was like, no, Penn still has enough vision to ride a bike. She needs to get off the bike when she
oh,
crosses the corners. And I did have a lot more vision then. I was considered legally blind, but she can still ride her
right.
bike. And she taught me the things I needed to do and do them. Like I didn't ride at night or when it was overcast. And when I got to a corner, I had
Hmm.
to get off the bike and cross the street just like I would if I was walking. But man, my
Yeah.
mom was like, no. Or
She
going
was afraid
horseback
for
riding.
you.
Yeah. Or even skiing, she was one of the
Yeah.
first persons to introduce me to skiing. And I thought my mother was going to have a heart attack. But and I think my dad was the biggest influencer there, and you know,
Right.
getting my mom to, sign those sign those release forms. But also even with
Right. Have it.
spouses and
Hmm.
and even your own children, it's
Right.
you know, it depends on how they perceive a disability. Some of them are like,
Right.
I don't care. Like it's just part of who you are. You have brown hair and you're blind. It doesn't like it's just part of who you are. Where others it's the opposite direction. So
Right. Yeah. I think some people just operate more out of fear, whether it's for themselves or for others, and I think a family or friends, they might mean well, they're concerned. They,
yeah,
don't want their loved one to get hurt or something like that. But at the same time, you just don't want to live in that kind of fear. You don't want to give up all the things you like to do. You don't want to,
right,
if you love to cook, you don't want to not cook because you're concerned about burning yourself or, how can you do that without
right,
vision? But you can. It's just
right.
learning it. And I think other people are more optimistic, like, wow, you can learn how to do that. There must be a way to do that. We just need to
Exactly.
figure it out,
But you don't have to do
and to do it
everything.
safely.
Yeah, you don't have to do
No.
everything. It's like I mean, I love skiing, but sometimes I'll say, "Oh, you should go skiing." And they're like, no, even if I could see, I wouldn't go skiing." Or or like grilling. I
Right.
Even if I could see, I don't think I would be the one at the grill. But I love cooking. Like I love cooking, but
Hmm.
grilling is not my thing. So don't feel like you have to learn everything, or if you don't want to do something, it could be that's just not your thing. It's not because you can't see or can't hear. It's just that's not of interest to you, and that's
Right. It's just
okay.
not your thing.
Yeah. Yeah, just like sighted people
But being able to focus on the things that you enjoy so you don't
yeah,
have to give them up.
exactly. Exactly. And find a way to do them. Find a way to do them. And surround yourself with people who believe in you and support you in that choice. That's a big, big deal.
And one other thing that I have heard from individuals who have vision loss is that they just get really burned out having to explain their disability to people. Because even though, maybe initially it's your friends, it's your family, it can come to feel like you're having to explain it to everybody, everybody in school, everybody in the grocery store.
Yes.
There's so many people you come in contact with that you're having to explain or educate, well, no, I actually am able to do this, or I need help with this aspect, but not that aspect. Right. And it just gets tiring and you feel burned out by it, and maybe even kind of angry about it.
Yeah, this is an ongoing, constant topic that anybody who I'm around who's blind or visually impaired, if it's somebody even like Evan who's been blind, since birth, or somebody who just got a diagnosis, this topic comes up all the time. Like I was in Colorado Springs, and it was this coffee house that was attached to a bookstore. And so my husband was over in the bookstore because that's not a place that does much for me. So I was over in the coffee house, and there was music, there was, the whole hip coffee house thing was going on. There was live music. And I was up at the counter getting a cup of tea. And this guy comes up to me, and I had my white cane, and he goes, "Are you sort of blind?" And I ran the sort of blind, I thought, is that a country? Or I couldn't, it took me forever. And I asked him, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" And he goes, "Are you sort of blind?" And I'm like, is that a disease? What is sort of blind?
It's like a random person just walking up and asking you this.
Yeah. And again, I ran sort of blind, all into one word. And
right.
Finally he goes, well, he's like, "Well, no, you see some, right?" And I was like, "Oh, sort of blind. And I laugh because it was I've never been asked that. I've been asked a lot of things, but I've never asked if I was sort of blind. And he said, "Yeah, my wife and I have been watching you ever since you came into the coffee house. And we're just amazed because you're just so comfortable moving around and, touching stuff. And you're not really blind, are you?" And I'm like, and so, yes, I explained, yes, I'm blind in the right eye. I have no central in my left eye. And what I do have left is really fuzzy. But yes, I'm really comfortable in my surroundings. And he goes, "My wife is going to kill me when she sees me talking to you because she's going to think I'm embarrassing her." And I was like, "Well, you just go back to her and you have a lovely evening." And that happens, some type of that scenario happens almost every time I leave the house. And, I really believe in education before anger, education before, but it does get tiring. But the way I look at it is, if I can be in the public and if somebody actually wants to talk to me and I can give them correct information and educate them in a way that they will go out and they will share what I told them with other people, then these stereotypes of, "Oh, there's something wrong with you," or "You should stay at home because you can't see." So it'll break those stereotypes. So if there's enough of us out there breaking those stereotypes and be willing to talk about it when people ask us, I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's how we're going to change how people look at disabilities. And kids are different. So I have a guide dog, and I've had a guide dog for a number of years. He's my fourth. And I love when children come up to me and ask me about my guide dog. They always know they're a guide dog. Most adults don't. They're like, "Oh, where did you get that cool harness thingy?" But children, they know it's a guide dog because they're learning about it in school, and they're learning how to interact with a guide dog. And so, but I had a little boy once that, his dad was I was in another coffee house. Yes, I like to hang out in coffee houses, but I had quite the conversation with this little guy, and his dad came out of, we got coffee and hot chocolate. And he came up to me as, "Oh, I'm so sorry if he was bothering you." And I said, no, he wasn't bothering me. And the little boy looked up at his dad. He goes, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be blind so I can have a cool dog like Beethoven." And that his dad probably did not have the response I did, but I'm like, yes, because he did not look at me as there was something wrong with me. He looked at me as, "Oh my gosh, I want to be like you so I can have a cool dog." And that's the way the world should look at people with disabilities, is that, "Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Look at that wheelchair. They can move so much faster than I can." Or, "Oh, look at that person with the cane. They can," it's a positive thing, not a negative thing. And that's what we need to do and it is tiring. It is so, some days I do not feel like educating the guy on the bus, sitting next to me, or in the restaurant or whatever. I don't feel like it, but I do feel that it's almost my duty almost, so that the next blind person or person with a disability that they encounter, they're going to be more educated. So
have you ever said to someone, if you've already done this a few times in that day, that, okay.
I definitely have shortened it.
I've explained this a few times today, so I've just given you a short version or something.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
To give yourself a break.
Or, I would love to tell you more about my story, but I have a meeting I have to get to, or I'm meeting a friend, or whatever it is, to get out of there a little bit faster. And usually people are really good about "Oh, of course, and, but again, try to keep that positive attitude. And then when you get home, then you can
Right.
But yeah, because I really feel, and it's true for anybody, right? If you meet somebody who's, from Japan, and it's your first person you've met from Japan, and if they're really grouchy and grumpy with you, you're going to think, "Oh, are people in Japan grumpy and grouchy?" It's the same thing. If they meet somebody who's blind and they're grumpy and grouchy, people are going to think all people that are blind are grumpy and grouchy.
Yeah. Well, next week we'll dive in a little bit more, kind of the reverse of what we've been talking about, of being the person with the questions. But thank you so much for being the guest this time on the show. Definitely everyone tune in to Aftersight, Penn's podcast. You'll really enjoy that, as well as Blindsight. Don't forget to schedule your Colorado Gives Day donations early and get that task off your list. If you have any comments or questions for us, you can contact us at ainc@aincolorado.org. If you want to email us questions or comments, we always love to get those. So thanks for joining us, and we hope that you'll tune in to the next podcast next week.